Hello, good people of Earth. Sonic Ox here. So I've been doing a lot of welding lately, and I pretty much wore out this particular welding helmet. But I got a new one. I decided to get the Vulcan Arc Safe welding helmet from Harbor Freight. Mainly because I used my neighbor's helmet, and I really like it, and also because it matches my welder. I have an Omnipro welder from Harbor Freight that you'll see in a minute. Right now I'm trying to film through my old welding helmet, and you can see the arc there, but it's just not a very good shot, and I'll have to work on that. I'm sure I can get a decent shot. So in an effort to make my videos shorter, I have sped up most of the video in this recording, and I want to show you guys some of the stuff here. So this is the Omnipro welder, Vulcan brand from Harbor Freight. Came with a little metal thickness gauge. I really like that. So you measure the thickness and the type of metal you're using. You decide what process you're going to weld with. You enter the thickness and the diameter of your wire. Here you can see I'm going to be MIG welding, and I'll be using 7525 argon CO2. So you can enter those parameters into the welder, and it gives you a really nice baseline to start with. And then of course you can fine-tune your voltage and wire feed speed and that kind of thing. The big tank there is 7525 argon CO2, and the small tank is straight argon for when I TIG weld. This particular welder will do stick, TIG, and MIG, and it'll do gas or flux core MIG. This is just a close-up of the helmet itself. There's the MIG gun. The TIG torch comes with pretty good stuff. The foot switch to control the amperage, I guess, when you're TIG welding. There's an old Craftsman toolbox that my neighbor gave me that was all beat up, so I pounded the dents out of it, sanded off the rust, painted it, and now I use it to hold my welding gear. So I decided to make a Sonic Ox logo to stick on my new welding helmet. I wanted to do it orange to match my theme there, and so I went over to my 3D printer that I want to make the plastic logo on, but the PLA I have on there right now, the plastic is gray in color. So here I'm going to remove the spool of gray and replace it with orange. I actually made that spool holder on the printer. I made the ends conical so it'll hold a lot of different sizes of spools, and then I just pressed a ball bearing into the void there, and then so the bearings just roll around that spindle up there. And it works out really well. It puts, you can put just the right amount of tension on the spool. I like to take really good care of my PLA, so when I'm not using it, when I store it, I put it back in the zippered bag that it came in. And this particular brand, Overture, they come all sealed up, actually kind of vacuum sealed in that zippered bag, and they put a little packet of silica gel in there. PLA filaments don't like moisture, so it's nice to, if you're going to store them, put them back in the zippered bag with some silica gel, and then I just put it back in the cardboard box that it came in and store it. Overture has been a really good brand for me for filament. They come packaged really well. All the information is on there. This particular variation of theirs is PLA Pro. I'm not sure what they do to it to make it Pro, but it is noticeably stronger than regular PLA, and I really like it. This company's been really good too. They send, with every spool, they send a little piece of build plate, which is a really good surface to print on. I used to just print on painter's tape on the build plate, and that works fine, but I've noticed that this stuff that they send has a really good surface for adhesion, and you're actually able to get your prints off as well a lot easier than painter's tape, and of course it doesn't leave tape residue. The only problem for me is that the samples that they send are smaller than my build plate, so I have to cut a few of them up and stick them to the plate to fit. I did read on the online portion of the company, there's the build plate there, that they are going to be manufacturing some 12-inch by 12-inch plates, and that is the size of the bed on my printer, so I'll definitely be getting a piece of that when they make it available. So here I'm just putting the orange filament on. I like to cut it at a kind of a sharp angle so that it'll feed into the extruder. It's that little tube that feeds down to the print head. Sometimes I have to take it off in order to get it to feed right, because the surfaces aren't a perfect match in there, but I recently put a new metal, I call it an extruder, I'm not really sure what it is. It's the mechanism that pulls the filament off of the spool and pushes it down to the feed head. And this particular kit, printer kit, came with a plastic one, which worked okay, but I bought a metal one and put new feeder gears and everything in it so that they're really sharp, and it forces that filament down to the print head in a much better way. You can see here I'm having trouble getting it to go into the tube, so I think I grab a wrench and take the tube off just so that I can make it match up. When you're changing filament, just a tip, it's you want to take your print head up to temperature so that the filament melts a little bit and the old filament pulls out of the print head, and the new filament will go in and melt a little bit, and you can make sure everything's going well. Yeah, so right here I have to take that, I think they're called a Bowden tube or something like that. Anyway, it's just a little Teflon tube that the filament runs through from the extruder to the print head. So sometimes I just have to do it that way so that it makes it into the tube. No big deal. This is one of the areas where I've sped up the film a little bit. I don't want to bore you guys to death showing me change filament. But for you guys that actually, use your 3D printers, it's just a good way to do it. I also sometimes have to take the spool back off the holder and rotate it until the tension is right on the filament so that it just feeds a lot easier. Taking a few extra moments now will save you a big mess, if you're in the middle of a big long print and you aren't there babysitting it. It can get into a bind, and so better to take a couple extra minutes now. You can see Sage in the background asking to go in. There's the right direction. So I think I've worked out the best way to use that camera. This is that new Vivitar. I believe its numbers are DVR922HD. It has 4K capability, but my software that I used to edit it couldn't hack it. And actually, I think it was probably more a function of my equipment than the software. The laptop that I use to edit my videos is about 5 years old, and that's usually when I swap them out. I just haven't yet. I don't feel like spending the money right now. So I've replaced the spool and check to make sure that the filament's coming out of the print head there. I guess it should be noted that I go into the parameters of the printer and disable the stepper motors so that I can just put them where I want them without hurting the gears or the belts. And you can see me just manually forcing some of that filament through that hot print head to make sure that it's printing correctly. And it is. Okay, so I go off to the studio to design the logo. Brought the helmet with me. This is also where I record music and things like that, so you'll see a lot of guitars and keyboards and equipment like that. It's another hobby. Just powering up the laptop. And what I intend to do is measure the spot where I want to put the emblems. My goal is to make 3 of them and put one on the front and then one on each side. So I'm just measuring the area in millimeters because that's what the software likes. Really love that helmet. It's super comfortable. The headgear inside is really top notch. And it will hold my cheater lens. My eyes are getting old enough that I like to put a 2-power cheater inside that helmet. That way I don't have to put like reading glasses on and off when I'm welding on small, delicate stuff. Okay, so I'm in Tinkercad software right now. That's my favorite design software. It's a shareware thing too. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can do really great designs in it. So I made the design in Tinkercad, and then I imported the file that I created over into Cura, C-U-R-A, and that's the other software that I use. I use Cura to slice the file, which basically just creates an OBJ file that the 3D printer can use. And this is cool too because it tells you about how long it'll take, and you can put your printer settings in there. I'm making these emblems about 5 millimeters thick, so they shouldn't take too long to build. I think this one's a couple hours to print, but there's the 3 of them. I thought about a couple of different ways. I was going to make the logo as a negative, so it put a hole in the plate, and then I was going to fill that void with, a different colored 2-part epoxy. But I decided to do this first, quicker and easier. So I run back out to the printer, grab the little XD card, and download the file onto the XD card. Then I'll take it back out and plug it into the printer and get the printer ready to print the emblems. So I take the nozzle up to 200 degrees Celsius, the bed up to 60 degrees Celsius. Those have been my best settings for this PLA. Right here I'm leveling the bed. This bed has an adjustment knob in each corner, and I like to put a piece of paper between the print head and the bed, and then make sure that I have a little tension, you want a little friction in that paper, but not so much that it tears it. Then I like to further prepare the print bed by rubbing it down with a little isopropyl alcohol. That takes off any residue or dust or anything that would keep the print from adhering to the bed. Now it's off to the races. I'll check in with a little video every once in a while. I'm not gonna show the whole 2 hours of printing, but here it is making the outlines. You can faintly see them in orange there. There it is, still towards the beginning of the print. You can see the logo start to take shape. I had hoped that the logos were going to be thin enough that they would be flexible enough to conform to the shape of the hood, but they were actually quite stiff. Not that big a deal. The surfaces are pretty flat that I intend to put them on. And anyway, all of this is just for fun. Nothing's critical. So the printer's still chugging along. It's important that you dial in the settings as best you can. You know, you have to remember that it's 1.75 millimeter, I believe, filament that you're forcing through a 0.04 millimeter hole. That works for me best at 200 degrees Celsius. And then, you know, you want it to have good adherence to the build plate. And for me, again, that's about 60 degrees Celsius. And here we are towards the end, showing the detail. That's part of the reason that I decided to go as thick as I did, because thinner I was losing detail. So now it's finished. Just remove the build plate, take it over to the workbench, use a spatula, kind of a flexible paint scraper, to pop them off. They can be difficult. This build plate is good, but just trying to pry them off of there can be hard. Also, I want to be careful so I don't cut myself or hurt the build surface or break the parts. I pop them all off, and I just use a hobby knife to clean up the excess plastic. This PLA Pro from that Overture company is really good stuff. These parts are relatively easy to clean up. I don't get a lot of stringing or rough edges. Now I just take some really strong two-sided tape. This is the strong outdoor stuff that people use to fasten address tiles to their house. I mean, it's good, strong stuff. But you can remove it if you have to. So I just put a piece on the back, cut it to fit. Did the same with the others. I think the hardest part of using that stuff is peeling the other side of the film off. But once I get that, I just stick it to the helmet where I want it. So thank you guys for watching my waste of time. It's just fun hobbies, and hopefully you can see other applications. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.